He burst into laughter right in front of a child, declaring that no black woman could possibly serve in elite military units. The young girl froze, tears welling in her eyes, until the entrance doors slid open and her mother stepped through wearing her military uniform. Amaya Richardson had no intention of showing off to anyone. At 12 years old, she found herself browsing the shoe section of a Dick's sporting goods store in Charlotte's South Park Mall, chatting casually with her closest friend about class's footwear and her desperate desire for a fresh pair of Nikes. Her tone was relaxed, but then, as children sometimes do, she mentioned something that caught everyone's attention. "Mom won't be here to get me until she finishes her briefing," Amaya said matter-of-factly, snapping a shoebox lid closed. "She serves in special forces, so her timing can be unpredictable sometimes." Her friend's eyes widened in surprise. "Hold on, your mother's actually in the military, like really fighting?" "Absolutely," Amaya replied with the same casual tone she'd used discussing her preferred breakfast. "She's Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson. She recently returned from an overseas deployment." It should have been just another innocent boast that kids share, but that's when harsh laughter pierced the air. It wasn't gentle amusement. It was cutting, condescending, the type designed to make someone feel insignificant. Standing nearby, browsing through a display of Under Armour sweatshirts, was Officer Colton Reeves. He was off duty, dressed casually in denim and a Carolina Panthers shirt, his badge attached to his belt like a fashion statement. He appeared more like a casual weekend shopper than law enforcement. However, the laughter belonged to him, and it was loud enough to draw attention from other customers. "Special forces?" Reeves said, shaking his head with amusement. "Come on, sweetheart, I've spent 20 years in law enforcement, and I can guarantee you right now there's absolutely no way your mom is operating with the Green Berets, especially not—" He paused, his gaze narrowing. "Especially not someone like her." The implication stung, and the tone cut even deeper. Amaya's face flushed as her lips formed a tight line. Around them, people had turned to observe. A mother pushing a toddler in her cart lingered close by, pretending to organize socks while obviously listening in. A couple of teenagers whispered behind their palms. Amaya's friend leaned in, speaking quietly. "Just don't pay attention to him. He's clueless." But ignoring him wasn't possible. The officer wasn't done talking. Reeves chuckled once more and continued. "Listen, I understand. Children enjoy creating stories. My son used to claim his father was Spider-Man. Same sort of thing. Adorable, but not reality. Not." The heat of embarrassment crept up Amaya's neck. She wanted to defend her mother, but every word got stuck in her throat. Her hands shook as she shoved the shoebox back onto the display, the cardboard scraping loudly against the rack. "Why would you say that in front of everyone?" her friend whispered anxiously. Amaya swallowed hard. "Because it's the truth." That quiet but firm defiance only prompted more laughter from Reeves. He tilted his head, addressing the small group of strangers now pretending to shop. "See? That's exactly what I mean. Sweet kid living in a fantasy world. Look, honey, there's nothing wrong with wanting your mother to be a hero, but you don't need to create make-believe stories." Make-believe stories. The phrase hit like a physical blow. Amaya's mother wasn't make-believe. She was real, stronger than anyone Amaya had ever known, a woman who would tuck her in one week and fly to the other side of the world the next. But standing there under the bright fluorescent lights of a sporting goods store, Amaya couldn't provide proof, and Reeves was well aware of it. That arrogant smile told her he felt victorious. "I'll tell you what," he said, tapping his badge. "If your mother truly is Special Forces, maybe she should stop by the police station sometime. We could all use a good laugh." Amaya's chest constricted. She thought about her mum's work-hardened hands, the rows of medals displayed in their home, the way she moved through airports with a commanding presence that made strangers step out of her path. Her mother had put her life on the line more times than anyone could count, and here was this man tearing it all down with a smirk in front of an audience. Her voice broke when she finally found words. "You don't know anything about her." That statement hung in the air. Reeves's smile wavered briefly, but he quickly recovered, clapping his hands together as if the matter was resolved. "Sure, kid. Whatever you say." Around them, shoppers exchanged glances. some amused, some uncomfortable, but nobody intervened. Nobody said, "She's telling the truth." The silence only amplified Amaya's humiliation. Her friend shifted nervously. "Amaya, maybe we should just wait outside." But Amaya couldn't move. Her sneakers felt glued to the linoleum floor. This wasn't simply about being embarrassed. It was about her mom, her reality, her pride, and watching it mocked in front of strangers made her chest burn with anger. Still, she lowered her gaze to the floor tiles, because what could she actually do? She was just a child. But what Amaya didn't know was that the moment she wished for her mum to appear, Nicole Richardson was already approaching, walking through the sliding glass doors of the mall in full uniform. The sporting goods store felt more cramped now. Every corner seemed filled with watching eyes, all focused on Amaya. She shifted her weight, wrapping her arms around herself, but nothing provided comfort. The officer's voice carried easily, echoing off shelves packed with backpacks and racks of athletic jerseys. Officer Colton Reeves leaned casually against the display as if he had unlimited time, like this was his entertainment. "You know," he said, wearing that half-smile that resembled more of a sneer, "people don't understand the kind of preparation it takes to qualify for special forces. Years of brutal training, combat missions, only the absolute best make it. It's not exactly the type of career you discuss at parent-teacher conferences." He laughed again, shaking his head. "And you want me to believe your mum is one of those elite soldiers?" The words twisted in Amaya's chest like a painful knot. She wished she could explain, wished she could describe the times her mum had been deployed for months, the letters she wrote in pencil because phones weren't always secure to use. But she couldn't. Not with him staring her down, not with strangers gathering like they were waiting for a performance. Her friend, Kaylin Torres, glanced nervously at the other customers. "We should really leave," she whispered again, but Amaya shook her head. Her throat tightened, but she pushed the words out. "I don't care whether you believe me. My mum doesn't require your approval." That response should have ended the confrontation, but Reeves wasn't the type of man who allowed a child to have the final word. He stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal, yet still loud enough for others to hear. "Listen, sweetheart, I understand you want to feel proud, but inventing stories isn't the solution. People will laugh at you, and honestly, a little girl like you has no idea what genuine sacrifice looks like." Amaya's ears burned. The tears she refused to shed blurred the shelves in front of her. Kaylin placed a hand on her arm, but Amaya pulled away, hands clenched at her sides. From across the aisle, a man wearing a baseball cap muttered quietly, "Just let the kid speak, man." His voice wasn't loud enough to carry, and Reeves ignored it. Amaya swallowed and spoke up again, her words trembling but steady enough to be heard. "You're wrong about her. You're wrong about everything." That earned another laugh from Reeves, but this one wasn't just amusement. It was the laugh of someone convinced they'd already won. He looked around the store, almost inviting others to join the joke. "Wrong. Kid, I've worked alongside real heroes. I've met soldiers. I've met the guys who actually deploy overseas, handle the dangerous missions, and trust me, they don't look like your mom." The final sentence landed heavier than anything else he'd said. Amaya froze, her face hot with shame and fury. She knew exactly what he meant, and so did everyone listening. Kaylin gasped. "That's not fair," she blurted. "You don't even know her." Reeves turned his attention to her, his grin widening. "And you do?" he said. "What? Did you two sit around sharing war stories? Please, I've worn a uniform longer than you two have been alive. I think I can distinguish between reality and fiction." Kaylin shrank back, but Amaya held her ground, though her hands trembled. "You'll see, she's coming," the officer smirked. "Sure she is. Maybe she'll parachute through the ceiling, right?" He chuckled, shaking his head as if the joke was too good to pass up. "Don't worry, kid, you'll learn. The world's harsh, better to face reality now than keep living in fantasy." Shoppers whispered, some shaking their heads, others quietly pulled out phones, recording the scene. Amaya noticed a woman pretending to browse yoga pants, her phone angled slightly toward them. A teenage boy near the checkout nudged his friend, pointing. The humiliation weighed on her like a heavy burden. For the first time, Amaya wished she had stayed silent, kept her mum's career private, the way Nicole often requested. But the thought of Reeves smirking, of everyone believing his version instead of hers, made her chest burn. She wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand and stood straighter. "You'll see," she repeated more firmly this time. The officer leaned back against the rack of hoodies, folding his arms like he'd just solved a case. "We'll see, huh?" he said with a smirk. "All right then, I'll wait." The silence following his words was louder than the music playing over the store's speakers. Every second stretched, the crowd restless but curious. Some waited to see if Amaya would break, if she'd retreat in shame. She didn't. But while Amaya stood there fighting back tears, her mother was already walking past the food court, her boots striking the tile floor with every step, about to turn the corner and change everything. Amaya's heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She remained planted in front of the sneaker shelves, but inside she was screaming to run. She wanted to vanish, wanted to rewind to, before she'd opened her mouth. If she had simply said, "My mom's busy," none of this would have happened. Now strangers stared at her like she was performing in a show she never agreed to be part of. Officer Colton Reeves stood like he was enjoying a leisurely afternoon comedy. He rocked back on his heels, arms crossed, his smirk permanently fixed in place. "You're pretty quiet now," he said, "starting to realize you might have exaggerated the truth a bit." The words cut deep. Amaya kept her eyes down, but his voice pulled her attention back up every time. She could almost hear the whispers circling. "Why is he targeting her like that?" someone muttered from a few aisles away. "Maybe the kid really did make it up," another voice responded, low but not low enough. Kaylin tugged at her sleeve again. "Amaya, please, let's just wait for your mom outside. You don't have to keep talking to him." But Amaya's chest burned. She wasn't sure if it was anger or shame or both. "I'm not lying," she whispered, mostly to herself. Reeves leaned closer, his voice a notch lower now. "Look, I'm trying to save you from yourself. You go around telling stories like this and people will laugh. Not everyone's going to be kind about it. You're better off sticking to the truth. Your mum works hard. She takes care of you. That's enough. No need to pretend she's some sort of war hero." Her fingernails dug into her palms. Pretend. That word echoed in her head, pretend, as if the nights she cried into her pillow because she missed her mom were imaginary, as if the medals in the shadow box on their wall were souvenirs from a gift shop. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not because she questioned her mom, but because she questioned herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken so casually. Maybe it was her fault that strangers now thought her mother's life was a joke. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it stung. Kaylin whispered, "He doesn't matter. You know what's true." But it didn't feel that way. Truth didn't matter when no one believed you. Reeves shifted his weight, glancing around the store like he had an audience to entertain. "I'll tell you what," he said, almost chuckling. "If your mom walks in here in uniform, I'll buy you those sneakers myself." He gestured toward the wall of shoes. "But until then, maybe keep the fairy tales at home." Fairy tales again. Her vision blurred, but she refused to blink. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby, holding a basket of clearance shirts, finally spoke up. "She's just a child," she said firmly. Reeves turned his head slowly, locking eyes with the woman. "And I'm just telling her the truth. Better she hears it now than keeps embarrassing herself." The woman frowned but looked away, shaking her head. No one else said a word. Amaya's stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to stand and watch, instead of saying she was right? Her mother always told her, "Courage isn't loud, Amaya. Sometimes it's just standing tall when you want to shrink." But standing tall felt impossible when the floor itself seemed to push her down. She pressed her lips together until they hurt. "You'll see," she whispered again, her voice trembling. Reeves sighed, looking bored now. "Kid, I've heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Believe me, I've heard every story, and every time it's the same thing, kids wanting to feel special. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth? The truth doesn't need defending." His words cut deep. Because wasn't that exactly what she was doing, defending? If the truth was so obvious, why did she feel like she was losing? Kaylin stepped between them, her small frame almost shaking. "You're being cruel," she said. "She's not lying." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "And how do you know?" "Because I've seen pictures," Kaylin snapped. "Her mum's in uniform. She has medals. She stopped, realizing the words sounded thin against his disbelief. Reeves chuckled under his breath. "Pictures? Anyone can buy a uniform at an army surplus store. Doesn't make it real." Amaya clenched her jaw. She hated that he had an answer for everything. Hated that every word he spoke made the crowd lean a little closer, like he was telling the version that made sense. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straighter. "You'll see," she repeated for the third time, the words coming out stronger this time. Reeves tilted his head, smiling like a man indulging a child. "All right, I'm waiting." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were just watching. The air thickened with expectation, every second dragging like an hour. Amaya could barely breathe, her thoughts racing, her palms slick with sweat. And then, just faintly, she heard it. The sound of boots against tile, steady and certain. But what Amaya didn't realize yet was that her mom's arrival wouldn't just end the laughter. It would flip the entire store upside down. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance hissed open, letting in a burst of chatter and footsteps from the food court. Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson strode through with a posture that turned heads without her saying a word. Her camouflage uniform was crisp, the patches on her sleeve catching the overhead light, her beret tucked neatly under one arm. She'd just left a ceremony at Fort Bragg and had decided to surprise her daughter by picking her up personally. She hadn't expected to walk into a crowd. From across the store, Amaya spotted her instantly. Relief surged through her chest so quickly it almost knocked her breath away. Her heart leaped, but so did her fear, because now her mother was about to see everything. Nicole's boots hit the polished tile in a rhythm that didn't waver. Her gaze scanned the racks of athletic wear, the line of shoppers, then stopped on the small cluster gathered near the sneakers. Her daughter, face flushed, fists balled at her sides. Beside her, Kaylin looking both scared and protective. And standing across from them, Officer Reeves leaning back like he owned the space. Nicole's jaw set. She crossed the aisle, her uniform drawing eyes as shoppers instinctively stepped aside. Amaya's throat went dry. She wanted to run into her mom's arms, but something about the way Nicole moved, focused, purposeful, made her stay frozen. Reeves spotted her too. At first, his grin didn't fade. He assumed she was just another parent arriving to pick up her kid, but as Nicole came closer, her rank and insignia were impossible to miss. His smirk faltered for half a second before he caught himself. "Mom!" Amaya's voice cracked, louder than she meant, but the relief in it silenced even the shoppers who'd been whispering. Nicole stopped beside her daughter, her hand resting lightly on Amaya's shoulder. The tension in Amaya's body melted just a little under the touch. "What's going on?" Nicole asked, her voice calm but carrying authority. Reeves straightened, shifting his weight, then forced a polite smile. "Evening, Mom, just clearing up a misunderstanding." Nicole's eyes flicked from Reeves to the circle of strangers, then back to her daughter. Amaya's lips trembled. "He said you couldn't be who you are, that I made it up." The words tumbled out, half shame, half desperation. Nicole didn't respond immediately. She simply studied Reeves, the silence stretching just long enough for him to feel it. Reeves gave a chuckle that sounded more nervous this time. "Kids, you know how they are. Big imaginations. I was just having a little fun with her." Nicole's voice stayed even, but it cut clean. "You mocked my daughter in front of strangers and called her a liar." The man's shoulders stiffened. "Now hold on. I didn't call her that. I just said—" "She repeated the truth," Nicole interrupted, "and you decided it was a joke. Tell me, officer, what exactly made it so funny?" The title, "Officer," was deliberate. Reeves's face tightened. A couple of the shoppers glanced at one another, surprised she knew. The badge on his belt glinted under the lights. He cleared his throat. "Look, Sergeant Major, With all due respect, Nicole raised a hand slightly. Respect doesn't begin with laughter at a child. The store had gone silent. Even the music overhead seemed quieter, as if the air itself paused to listen. Amaya stood taller now, the weight of humiliation lifting as her mother's presence filled the space. Kaylin's eyes widened, almost in awe. Reeves shifted again, the confidence draining by degrees. I didn't mean anything by it, just thought it was unusual, that's all. Nicole tilted her head. Unusual doesn't mean impossible. It means you've never seen it. And maybe the problem is less about me being here, and more about you never imagining I could be. Her voice wasn't raised, but the words struck harder than any shout. Amaya looked up at her mother, pride swelling inside her chest. She wanted Reeves to say something now. She wanted him to try, but he didn't. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again, his smirk finally gone. The woman with the clearance basket whispered to the person beside her, "She's the real thing." The teenage boy at the checkout muttered, "No way, that's legit." And Amaya, for the first time that afternoon, breathed without feeling like the whole world was against her. Nicole squeezed her daughter's shoulder lightly before turning back to Reeves. "Next time before you laugh at a child, remember that truth doesn't need your permission to exist." Reeves's throat bobbed. He gave a stiff nod, his earlier bravado scattered like dust. But what Reeves didn't realize was that the confrontation had only just begun. Nicole wasn't finished making her point. The air in the store felt heavy now. No one spoke. No one shuffled through racks or pretended to browse. Every shopper within earshot had turned toward the sneaker aisle, their eyes bouncing between the officer's stiff stance and the uniformed woman standing firm beside her daughter. Nicole didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Authority carried in her posture, in the steady way she met Reeves's eyes. "Officer Reeves," she said evenly, glancing at his badge, "I don't know you. You don't know me, yet you saw fit to laugh at my daughter, to dismiss her in front of strangers. Why?" Reeves licked his lips. The confidence he'd worn so easily minutes ago was slipping. "Look, Sergeant Major, I wasn't trying to—" "Answer the question," her tone sharpened, but only slightly. "Why mock a child who spoke the truth?" He shifted his weight, trying to pull back some control. "It wasn't like that. I just thought she was exaggerating. Kids do that." Nicole studied him, her gaze unblinking. "Exaggerating is saying your mum makes the best cookies in the world. Exaggerating is telling your friends you can run faster than a car. My daughter didn't exaggerate. She told you who I am, and instead of listening, you laughed." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. The woman with the clearance basket set it down, her arms crossed now, clearly invested. Reeves forced out a laugh, but it sounded thin. "All right. Maybe I shouldn't have laughed, but you've got to understand, it caught me off guard. I mean, Special Forces—" "What about Special Forces caught you off guard?" Nicole cut in again. "That my daughter knows the term, or that she used it to describe me." He hesitated. That pause spoke louder than anything else. Nicole leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to force him closer if he wanted to hear. "You assumed, because I'm a woman, because I'm black, you couldn't imagine someone like me holding that title, so you mocked my daughter to protect your own assumptions." Reeves swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the onlookers, realizing he wasn't just answering her. He was answering everyone. Kaylin stepped closer to Amaya, whispering, "He looks nervous." Amaya whispered back, "Good." Reeves drew in a slow breath, trying to find footing. "I never said anything about race. I never said anything about women. You're putting words in my mouth." Nicole straightened, her expression calm. "You didn't have to say it. Your laugh said it for you." A few people in the crowd nodded faintly. A man near the register muttered, "She's right." Reeves's jaw flexed, his smirk gone completely now. "Fine. Maybe I came across wrong. I'll admit that. But I didn't mean harm." Nicole glanced down at Amaya, then back at him. "Intent doesn't erase impact." She stood here while a grown man with a badge turned her truth into entertainment. Do you have any idea how small that can make a child feel? Amaya felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was from pride. Her mom was saying everything she couldn't. The silence stretched again, the officer shifting his weight, clearly aware of every phone camera angled his way now. Nicole let the pause hang before continuing. I've served my country for 22 years. I've led soldiers through terrain you'll never see, made decisions that carried life and death. I wear this uniform because I earned it. Every stripe, every insignia. And yet the hardest battle I fight is here, convincing people like you that my existence is not a joke. The words hit like steel wrapped in velvet. Reeves' face reddened. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. His arguments dried up. Nicole turned slightly, addressing not just him, but the entire store. This isn't about me alone. It's about what happens when someone decides their assumptions matter more than the truth. My daughter shouldn't have to defend my career to strangers. She shouldn't have to stand here in tears because a man couldn't imagine her words being real. A quiet clap broke the silence. The woman with the clearance basket started it, then stopped, embarrassed. But the gesture had already left its mark. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, his bravado long gone. All right, point taken. Nicole studied him one last time, then spoke quietly enough that only he and Amaya could clearly hear. Next time, remember that respect costs you nothing, but its absence costs others everything. Amaya looked up at her mother, her chest swelling with a pride that pushed out the shame she'd carried. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she felt steady again. But even as Reeves tried to retreat, the eyes of the crowd weren't finished with him. They wanted more than an uneasy apology, and Nicole wasn't done teaching the lesson. Officer Reeves shifted uncomfortably, his arms crossing over his chest, like he wanted to fold in on himself. The crowd wasn't dispersing. If anything, it was growing. People from other aisles drifted closer, drawn by the tension, by the sight of a decorated soldier standing toe-to-toe with a police officer who had started something he could no longer control. Nicole didn't move. She held her ground, one hand resting on Amaya's shoulder, her presence steady as stone. The contrast was stark. Reeves fidgeting, Nicole calm, composed, unyielding. "You think this is done," she said softly. "But it isn't. Not until you understand what you did here." Reeves forced out a weak laugh, hoping to mask his discomfort. "Look, Sergeant Major, I said I was wrong. What else do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry if I embarrassed your kid. That good enough?" The apology was hollow, thrown out like spare change. A few people in the crowd murmured disapproval. Nicole's eyes never wavered. "No, because that wasn't an apology. That was you trying to save face." Reeves's jaw worked, but nothing came out. Nicole continued, her tone still calm but sharper now. "An apology is not about you. It's about the person you harmed. My daughter stood here while you laughed at her. She believed in me so much that she proudly told the truth, and you crushed it under your heel. If you want to apologize, you look at her, not at me." The weight of the moment pressed down on Reeves. He glanced at Amaya, who stared back at him, lips pressed tight, eyes wet, but unflinching. The officer shifted again, clearly uncomfortable with the silence that demanded more from him. Finally, he muttered, "Sorry, kid." Nicole arched a brow. "Try again." This time the murmur of agreement from the crowd was louder. Reeves's face flushed red. His shoulders sagged under the gaze of strangers who expected him to rise to the moment. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. "Amaya, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have laughed at you. I shouldn't have said what I said. You told the truth and I didn't believe you. That was wrong." Amaya's chest swelled. For once, she didn't feel like shrinking. She held his gaze for a second longer, then looked up at her mum. Nicole gave the slightest nod, a gesture of reassurance. Reeves exhaled, as if hoping that would end things, but Nicole wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying clearly. "This isn't about one man and one child. This is about how easy it is to dismiss someone when their story doesn't match what you expect. My daughter's truth was simple, but instead of listening, it was easier to assume she was lying. How many times does that happen? How many times do kids grow up thinking their voices don't matter because someone with power decided to laugh instead of listen?" The words landed like stones on water, rippling through the group of shoppers. Heads nodded, Some looked uncomfortable, not because Nicole was wrong, but because they recognized how many times they'd seen something similar and stayed silent. Kaylin squeezed Amaya's hand, whispering, "She's amazing." Nicole looked down at her daughter. "Amaya, you never have to be ashamed of telling the truth. Not when it's about me, not about anything. If someone can't handle it, that's their weakness, not yours." Tears threatened at the corners of Amaya's eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from relief, from vindication, from pride. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, clearly wanting the ground to swallow him. He muttered, "I already said I was sorry." Nicole looked at him one last time. "Then live like it. Next time you meet a child with pride in their voice, don't strip it away, let them keep it. Because once you take that from a kid, it's not so easily given back." The silence that followed was thick. Then, almost unexpectedly, a young man near the checkout counter clapped once. Another joined. Within seconds, scattered applause filled the store, not loud, not rowdy, but steady and supportive. Reeves's face burned crimson. He gave a curt nod and stepped back, retreating toward the exit, no longer the center of attention, but the man who'd been schooled in front of strangers. Amaya turned to her mom, her voice small but steady. "Thank you." Nicole bent down slightly so her face was level with her daughter's. "No, Amaya. Thank you for telling the truth when it wasn't easy. That's braver than anything I've ever done in uniform." The words sank deep, settling in Amaya's heart like armor. For the first time that day, she believed it. But as the crowd slowly dispersed, Amaya realized something else. The lesson wasn't just for Reeves, it was for everyone watching, including her. The store began to quiet again, though the air still buzzed with what had just taken place. A few shoppers lingered, pretending to look at shelves but sneaking glances at Nicole and her daughter. Some whispered to each other, their tones hushed but respectful now. The tension that had filled the space was gone, replaced with something heavier, something thoughtful. Amaya stood taller beside her mother, still holding Kaylin's hand. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. The shame that had burned her cheeks only minutes earlier had dissolved into pride. Nicole glanced down at her. "You all right?" Amaya nodded. "Yeah, I hate that it happened." Nicole's hand rested on her daughter's shoulder. "I know. But sometimes moments like this teach us more than 100 quiet days ever could. You don't forget them, and neither does anyone who watched." Kaylin looked up at Nicole, her eyes wide. "You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you." Nicole gave a small smile. "I wasn't just talking to him. I was talking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth doesn't matter." A man in a baseball cap, the same one who had muttered earlier, finally spoke up louder. "Ma'am, thank you. I've got a daughter myself. She's 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage." Nicole nodded once, the simple gesture carrying weight. Courage isn't about not being scared, it's about speaking anyway. Amaya's chest swelled. Hearing those words, said in front of strangers, made her feel like her mother's pride in her was carved into the air. As the shoppers began to drift away, a woman paused near Nicole. She lowered her voice, but spoke clearly enough for Amaya to hear. "Thank you for your service, and thank you for showing him he was wrong." Nicole's gaze softened. "We all serve in our own ways. Today my daughter served by standing tall. That's something worth respecting." The woman smiled and walked off, leaving Nicole and Amaya standing by the sneakers that suddenly didn't seem so important anymore. Amaya turned to her mum. "Did I make it worse by saying it?" Nicole shook her head. "You made it better. You didn't hide who I am. You spoke the truth even when people laughed. That takes more strength than some adults ever learn." For a moment, Amaya felt the weight of what had happened lift off her. She could breathe again. Kaylin gave her a quick squeeze. "Told you he was wrong." Amaya laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "Yeah, you did." They walked toward the exit together, Nicole's boots steady against the tile. People still glanced at them, but not with ridicule now, with something closer to admiration. As they stepped out into the wider mall, Amaya's mind replayed the scene. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of doubt, and then her mum's voice, clear and strong, cutting through all of it. She realized that even though it had been one of the hardest moments of her young life, it had also been one of the most important. Nicole slowed her stride and bent slightly toward her daughter. Amaya, remember this. People will doubt you. They'll laugh, dismiss you, try to make you smaller. But you never let them take your truth. Not for me, not for anyone. Promise me that. Amaya looked up at her mom, eyes shining. I promise. Nicole kissed the top of her daughter's head, the simple gesture stronger than any speech. By the time they reached the car, Amaya felt lighter. She still carried the memory of Reeves's smirk, but it no longer weighed her down. Instead, it reminded her of something else. How quickly a person's assumptions can crumble when faced with the truth. And as the car doors shut and the mall disappeared behind them, Amaya leaned back against the seat, her hand still gripping Kaylin's, and thought, I'll never be embarrassed about Mom again. Because that day, in a crowded store under bright fluorescent lights, she had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Never let anyone laugh you out of your own truth. And maybe, just maybe, the people who had witnessed it learned something too, that respect costs nothing, but withholding it can scar someone deeply. Nicole started the car, glanced in the rearview mirror and said softly, You girls ready to head home? Amaya smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. Yeah, let's go home. The mall faded into the distance, but the lesson stayed. And for everyone who heard it, whether they admitted it out loud or not, it would linger long after the sound of Nicole's boots had faded from the tile floor. Life has a way of putting us in moments we don't expect, moments that test whether we'll stay quiet or speak up, whether we'll shrink or stand tall. If this story resonated with you, let it be a reminder. Always defend the truth, no matter who tries to silence it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next.